Congressman Jim Clyburn has been vocal in calling for the Trump administration to invoke the 25th Amendment following this week's deadly Capitol riots. But now the House of Representatives is preparing to introduce articles of impeachment for the second time against President Trump. For more, I want to bring in Democratic Congressman James Clyburn of South Carolina. He currently serves as a House Majority Whip and also is a co-chair of President-elect Biden's inaugural committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. We now know that the House is planning to introduce articles of impeachment on Monday. What is the current state of that effort, and do you have enough votes, you believe, for it to be successful?
Well, thank you very much for having me, but we're going to work over the weekend. We've already started. As you know, it's a bipartisan call for impeachment. There's now a bipartisan call for him to resign from office. You know, I've been saying sort of facetiously for the last 24 hours, this president is always looking to do something that's never been done before. And we should accommodate him by doing something that's never been done before, impeaching a president for the second time in one term. So I think the votes will be there come Monday, because I think people will begin to look even closer at his words, his actions. And it's not just about what happened on Wednesday. It's also about what happened last week when he made those phone calls into Georgia trying to get them to overturn an election. That in and of itself was impeachable. So if we're going to have articles of impeachment, I hope one of them will deal with that election as well as what may have been done inciting to riot.
Congressman, are Democrats worried that impeachment could, in fact, backfire, further dividing the nation, just as President-elect Biden says that he wants to bring the country together?
I think that those people who call impeachment divisive really are not listening to the American people. The American people, through the state of Georgia, expressed themselves very well last Tuesday. Who would have thought the two Democrats, one black and one white, one Christian, one Jewish, who would have thought that the people of Georgia would have elected those two young men? But they did. Why? Because they are trying to bring this country back together. And they know that's what it's going to take to have a definitive election. So Georgia has done its part. Now it's time for Congress to do its part. And I think the American people will be very pleased to get rid of this divisive person who's sitting in the White House.
Congressman Clyburn, you accused former Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos and Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao of, quote, running away from their responsibility by resigning before they could invoke the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump from office. But even as we're seeing some Republicans say that a bright line has been crossed, there are still more who have said nothing or who have made excuses. What do you say to these people?
Well, you know, anytime you have a movement like this, you will have people who defy common sense. Who would have ever thought that you would have people of color, people who themselves were enslaved, will go out and work against the people who were trying to free them? That's what happened to Denmark Vesey. So every time I hear people talk about that, I remind them there is always someone who will defy common sense. And that's what's happening here. Common sense dictates that this country is bigger than any one party, that democracy is bigger than any one person. That is exactly what Senator Goldwater and others did when Richard Nixon was running roughshod over the Constitution. They didn't ask Democrats to do it. They went out and said, it's time for you to leave town, Mr. Nixon, because this country is bigger than you. And I don't know why Republican leadership now cannot see that we got 13 or 14 days left in this administration. But that's 13 or 14 days left with him having his thumb near the nuclear codes, having access to what could toss this country into some kind of armed conflict unnecessarily. This man has no bounds, and he will do anything that he thinks will install him as a strong man.
Congressman, are you really concerned about the examples that you cited, the president with the nuclear codes or starting an unnecessary war? Or do you think that in these final remaining days, what needs to be done is to hold him accountable? Is it really the security concerns, or is it because you feel like the president of the United States simply ought not behave this way?
No, I think it's security with me. 13 days to put up with this, 13 more days, that's fine. That's not my fear. My fear is for having an unstable person who won't tell the truth about anything, who won't let anything pass that he thinks is an insult to him. He'll do anything, and that's what I fear.
Well, I understand that there was some damage to your office and your iPad was stolen during the riots on Wednesday. You said that you believe that this could have been an inside job. What type of investigation needs to happen in order to bring these people to justice?
Well, we found, I understand from my staff, that my iPad was in an unusual place that may have been taken there by them for safekeeping, but they found it. But I do also know that there was activity outside of my inner office where most people don't know where that is. The office with my name on the door was not touched. But the office where I do most of my work in, they were on that floor and outside that door. And my staff secured the office by moving the furniture in that office up against the door. And some of them are still a bit rattled over it. And so I do believe that something was going on. They knew where to go. And I've been told since I said this by some other Congress people that their staffs are saying that they saw people being allowed into the building through side doors. Who opened those side doors for these protesters, or I call them these mobsters, to come into the building, not through the main entrance where the commenters are, but through side doors? Yes, somebody on the inside of those buildings were complicit in this.
If true, that would be a shocking dereliction of duty. Congressman, before I let you go, I just want to get personal with you for a moment more, if you don't mind. In an interview with Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright, he told me about the double injury of the Capitol attacks on people of color who saw in the police response a very different image than what Black Lives Matter protesters in D.C. this summer. As the highest-ranking black member of the House of Representatives, I'm wondering if you could tell us how this attack affected you.
Very much. As you know, I'm a native South Carolinian, born and raised here. My parents were South Carolinians. We know what a double standard is. And we have seen a double standard here. I was sitting with Speaker Pelosi when we got the information that the mayor of the District of Columbia made a request for National Guards. And that request was denied, supposedly, by the Defense Department. Now, that may or may not be true, but I do know this. The President-elect has shared with the American people a text he got from his granddaughter, showing him a picture of what security looked like when Black Lives Matter marched peacefully on the Capitol, on the capital city, and what it looked like the morning of this insurrection. When I drove onto the campus at 8:30 in the morning, getting ready for a 9 o'clock whip meeting, so to be brought up to date by Zoe Loughran on what was going on with security, I knew something was amiss because the perimeter had not been established. There were no security people on the steps. They were all out in a place where I thought gave little security, and we saw what the result of that. That's why Nancy Pelosi asked for the resignation of the chief of the Capitol Police and the sergeant at arms, because they did not do their jobs. They were not just derelict. You could say they were complicit.
Well, we are certainly awaiting those investigations, and we appreciate so much you coming on the show and talking to us about them. Congressman Clyburn, thank you.
Thank you.